Welcome to Retirement Rescue Radio, a show specifically designed to help retirees and pre-retirees maximize their financial efficiency so you can live the retirement lifestyle you've always imagined. Your host is Nate Miller, investment advisor representative and author of the CPR Retirement Rescue Roadmap. Nate discusses thoughts and ideas from some of today's most knowledgeable professionals in the field of finance. He offers strategies along the way to help you make better financial decisions so you can maximize your retirement. This is Retirement Rescue Radio.
Well, hey there, Retirement Rescue Radio listeners. This is Nate Miller, your host of this podcast, and we are going to be doing a kind of a catch-all episode here. I'm going to call it Podcast Potpourri today because we're going to go through a few different topics. We're going to touch on the whole Evergrande crisis in China, talk about where we think home prices might be headed, even talk about the 1% and how much tax they pay. So without further ado, we'll just kind of jump in here. A lot of people have been watching the Evergrande debacle over in China. And what is Evergrande? I believe they are the second largest property developer in China, heavily laden with debt. And a payment came and went, and they haven't talked about any, I think it was like an $83 billion. Hang on a second. Let me get the actual numbers here for you. $83 million payment to foreign investors came and went with no indication that Evergrande had met its obligations. So it raised questions about what would happen if its huge debt load actually went sour. And the Chinese government does not really want to step in yet. And what we're talking about, so a lot of people have actually called Evergrande's problems China's Lehman moment, Lehman Brothers. If you remember, it was a reference to the 2008 collapse of the Lehman Brothers investment bank, and that kind of started the whole global financial crisis. And so Evergrande's collapse, they warn, could expose other debt problems in China and hit foreign investors who hold considerable amounts of Evergrande debt and other property developers in the country. So that's what they're saying. However, Evergrande is not Lehman. So Lehman Brothers blew up in 2008 because the U.S. government failed to realize it was too big to fail. If you know what your thoughts are on that, we'll go into it a different time. But Lehman sold a lot of flawed financial products around the entire world. So when it blew up, it created systemic problems worldwide. That's not the case with the Chinese real estate company. And so, it's been hurt by a lot of Chinese government oversight, which, seems sensible given its size. But it has not, that's not what it does. It is not reached worldwide. It's going to create some problems in China, yes. But this is one of the reasons that I would say, don't hold too much international, especially, exposure to China, holdings inside your portfolios. You never want to be too overweighted in any one area anyway. And so this is always one of the issues when you have international investments anyway, is you're going to be investing in a country that may have certain systemic things going on that you may not be aware of. But it's not a Lehman Brothers moment because, like I said, Lehman sold flawed financial products around the entire world. Evergrande is not in that situation. So we'll just kind of leave it at that. A little more, I'm going to say closer to home now, home prices. Where do we think home prices are going to be going next? Because just to give you a little background here, the whole COVID-19 housing market, but underpinned by remote work and pandemic-induced low mortgage rates, and a demographic wave of first-time home buyers has made this like the hottest real estate market in the nation's history. Matter of fact, since the onset of the crisis, the median home list prices are up 23%. 23%, that is nuts. So if I actually applied that, it's like, think about this for your own personal residence that you've got there. If it was up 23%, nearly a quarter up from where it was last year, what does that mean your house is now worth? So that's crazy to think of some of those prices, right? And so here recently, the real estate market has started to soften a little bit, but not a ton. So since the bottoming out in the spring, housing inventory is up 30% as some home buyers start to balk at record prices, and more sellers who fear losing out on big gains are listing. So while the market is clearly still a seller's market, it has inched a little bit closer to being in the buyer's favor, I guess, here in the last few months. But what the softening means for the future home price growth is it doesn't necessarily mean bad things. I mean, yeah, it hasn't quite gone, or it's not increasing it at the level it was, but the weakest projection really comes from a research firm, CoreLogic, and this is according to Yahoo Finance, and it projects a 2.7% appreciation in the coming 12 months. That's the worst case scenario of any of the projections. Meanwhile, there's a couple other ones, John Burns Real Estate Consulting and Freddie Mac even, which they do calendar year forecasts. They're projecting home price growth of 4 and 5.3% respectively for 2022. So the annual home price growth was the most that we have ever seen in the 45-year history of the CoreLogic Home Price Index. And so that price gain has far exceeded income growth, and that's eroded affordability, really. And so in the coming months, this will temper demand and lead to a slowing in price growth. So a lot of people are like, what was some of the reasons that this increased so much? And like I mentioned, everybody realizing that they can work from home now, so they don't have to work close to their job. They can literally live anywhere. So that's led to a mass exodus from a lot of different places, but strong fundamentals as well. There are we are in the middle of the 5-year period during which the largest chunk of millennials, those that were born between 1989 and 1993, they're hitting their 30s now. And that's the age when first-time home buying really kicks into gear. And so now we have a huge demographic turning of ages. Like the same thing happened with the baby boomers. Like they were think of them, if you look at a timeline, if you think of that timeline like a hose, they were just a basketball moving through this hose, right? Moving through this timeline because they were such a large demographic chunk of the population. And so the same thing is actually happening with millennials now. So you've got the Generation X that came right behind the baby boomers, which was much, much smaller, but then you've got the millennials, which are now larger again. And so we're dealing with a demographic need here, and couple that with the COVID-19 response, and then, with the low mortgage rates, and then the actual increase in people wanting to move because they no longer have to be tethered to the same city that their job is in. And you've got, like the perfect storm for a big real estate boom. So they're going to start slowing down, but like I said, that they're not going to be stopping, at least according to these research firms. And so, yeah. There we go. Softening a little bit. So if you are thinking of buying a place, maybe just wait a few more months, I guess. So see some of those prices maybe not be so crazy. You may not have to be competing with 8 other people for the same house and giving more than what the list price was if you wait just a little bit. So I'd say that it is softening a bit. So yeah, maybe just give it a little bit of time. If you're looking to sell, maybe this is a great time. But remember, if you're in the situation where you have to sell and buy something else, that might be a difficult spot to be in. So here yesterday, I think the last podcast episode we did we were talking about the Biden tax changes and really what that meant. And there's a whole thing about talking about the top 1%, 1% income earners, and how I want to say that the government has really vilified the top 1%. And what's interesting about that, so we're all talking about how they don't pay their fair share and all of that. And President Joe Biden, he said that big corporations and the super wealthy have to start paying their fair share, and it's long overdue. So what he's wanting to do is beef up the IRS to collect more taxes that some high income households currently evade. I don't like the word evade because it's built into the tax law. It's like these are legal ways of lowering one's tax bill. And the question, I keep finding this, how they keep vilifying all these corporations that are not paying their fair share. I say that with air quotes if you're just listening to this on the audio. And yet they're the ones that are just spending like crazy and then just continually asking us, the American people, to pay their bill. I mean, that's what happens. How about the government stop spending so dang much money? How about you actually cut some of the programs that you don't need anymore? How about you actually show fiscal responsibility? How about you set the bar high instead of set the bar low, and actually are an example to other countries or even the American people themselves on how you should actually run a country. Fiscal responsibility. Come on. So yeah, there's my rant there for a second. So yeah, why don't we cut spending rather than just continually asking more and more people to foot your bill? So anyway, he wants to do that. I already talked a little bit about the taxes of what they're wanting to do right now. They also want to put a 3% surtax onto incomes over 5 million. So I did not talk about that. So that's an additional tax that starts hitting the really, really top, right? But how much does it really take to be in the top 1% of income earners? And this is according to Yahoo Finance. And they say that to get into the top 1% of income earners, $540,000. So it takes $540,000 to claim a spot in the top 1%. And that was in 2018, according to the IRS. So we should note that the top 1% of wealth is different. Could be more important, but this is top 1% of income earners is $540,000. The top 1% of earners claimed about 21% of all the adjusted gross income in 2018, with most of that income coming from capital gains dividends, not from their labor. And by comparison, the bottom 50% of taxpayers claimed about 11.6% of all total adjusted gross income. And so what that means is, so the top 1% claimed more of the adjusted gross income than the bottom 50%. And the top 1% paid about $615 billion in taxes in 2018, which accounted for about 40% of all the federal income taxes paid. And the bottom half of the income distribution paid about 3% of the federal income taxes that year. So here's where the whole they need to pay their fair share argument just falls. It completely doesn't hold up, because they say, oh, the rich should pay their fair share. Well, all of the research shows that the top 1% pays around 40% of all federal income taxes that are paid, while the bottom 50% only pay 3% of the federal income tax. So the top are paying their fair share. They are paying more than their fair share. They are paying the highest share in the entire country. And so, yeah, that's why I hate they're not paying their fair share argument, because once again, it's division. That's what they're doing, is they're dividing us, and they're keeping the arguments among ourselves rather than looking up to the government and saying, maybe we should be questioning some of the things that they're doing rather than just fighting amongst ourselves, right? So anyway, this is going to be a really short podcast this week. I just wanted to get a few topics there. Evergrande home prices and the 1%. So Evergrande, is that going to create some volatility? Sure, absolutely. However, I wouldn't look at that to be a 2008 moment here in America. It's just not systemically set up the way that Lehman Brothers was. Lehman Brothers was, worldwide, faulty financial products throughout the entire world. Evergrande's not set up like that. So it might be a big hit to the Chinese market, but it's not going to be a huge hit to ours. That's going to be my little crystal ball projection there. Is it going to create some short-term volatility? Absolutely. It's going to be in the news for a while. It could be an opportunity to buy some different places. We are in September still for a few more days, right? And they always tell you to buy the dip. So yeah, maybe it would be some good buying opportunities at that point. So it's not going to be as bad as what people think. And at least that's going to be my prediction. Maybe I'll come back on here, in several weeks or months and be like, oops, I was wrong, or hey, I was right. That's always the danger of putting predictions out there, right? So I don't think it's as much need to worry about that as what most people are thinking. So that's it, guys. Really quick episode today. We'll keep scouring the internet and looking for other content to continue to bring to you, because we always want to empower you to live the retirement that you deserve. Take care. Have a great week.